Hi, everybody. David Nour. I want to welcome you back to another episode of our Curvebenders Live. I'm elated that I'm joined today by a friend, a client, colleague. We've had some great fun together over the years. I want to welcome Karin Hamel from Schneider Electric. Hello, Karin.
Hi, Nour. Happy to be here.
It is great to have you. Karin, for those that may not know as much about you, would you kindly start with your professional background?
Sure. So, Karin Hamel, I'm hailing from the Chicago suburbs, but I'm originally from Rhode Island. Yes, it is a state, the smallest state. I did get out. But I went to the University of Rhode Island with a degree in business management. And I actually initially got into restaurant management out of school because I'd paid my way through college, bartending and waiting tables. But being a Rhode Islander, at the time, there was just one of two employers in the early 2000s that you could go to with a business degree. And that was GTech or APC, American Power Conversion. So it was APC where I found myself, after graduating from the restaurant business, and Schneider Electric then acquired APC sometime after, and I'm still with Schneider Electric today.
So how long is this? What anniversary are you working on?
Well, it's non-consecutive, and I stepped away from my career for a few years, but for the last 11 years, I have been with Schneider Electric.
That's awesome. And for our audience, give us a glimpse into your role or realm of responsibilities today.
Right. So today I lead services for our U.S. digital buildings business. And, Schneider is all about global energy management and automation. Basically, I should explain, when most people that haven't heard of Schneider Electric, their immediate reaction is, oh, so you're an electric company. No, we actually do not produce electricity. We live in between what's called like plant to plug. So in between that space where electricity and energy is being consumed, we try to make it efficient and green and affordable and all of that good stuff. In buildings, the business I'm in, it's all about smart, intelligent building management systems. A building needs a brain in order to be efficient and help that building be the best it can be for whatever purpose it has. And so I get to lead the services for all of that. It's pretty exciting.
So I've gotten to know Karin over the last couple of years, and you're passionate about that field service function, and in particular the field technician. So we'll talk a lot about that. For our audience, we're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter. I would encourage you to jump in because we're going to talk a lot about curve benders, those that really create a very different trajectory, a very different both direction and destination in your personal and professional growth. And Karin is the poster child or the poster leader of that concept, of that journey. So Karin, let's start with, what are some of the big trends? I could have sworn we're going to be done with this thing once we got a vaccine, but 2 years into this global pandemic, what are some of the trends you've observed in field service during this pandemic? And I'm curious which ones you believe are going to kind of stay with us.
Well, regardless of the pandemic, we are already bracing ourselves for the silver tsunami. I think it's now a household term everyone's come to know and love. And then through the pandemic, the rise of the Great Resignation, which is another one, all of these things impacting labor, essentially, and how do you capture, import, and retain great talent in your organization. Those two massive megatrends are impacting that daily. And then coupled with it, everyone, regardless of what industry you're in, is dealing with the supply chain challenges. So all of this to say, these things are the perfect storm for needing to change the way we operate and do business. And some of the technology trends that I've been able to leverage to help us overcome those challenges, usually it has a lot to do with working smarter, not harder, and automating and digitizing trends. So for example, artificial intelligence software, virtual reality glasses to help people solve and service things remotely, telematics for our fleet vehicles. There's a ton of new digital technology solutions on the market that we're putting to work for us as we face these, labor and supply chain shortages.
The best leaders I know at the moment, and again, I've been at this for a while, are always recruiting. They're always looking to, as you said, import, develop, nurture, amplify the talent in their organizations, because they realize their success is heavily tied to that exceptional talent, and not just recruiting them, but developing them and nurturing them and really scaling their success. Yeah. So you and I met through the Service Council. And for our audience, if you don't know about the Service Council, John Carroll, Sheila, Ahmed, and those guys have done a great job in building an exceptional community of field service, customer experience professionals. Highly, highly encourage you to check out servicecouncil.com. You've built a reputation, and I know SC does as well, of being kind of very much field service and that technician centric. Can you share some examples of what the field technicians mean to the Schneider business? And what are you guys doing to put them at the center of your efforts, your organization, your success?
Well, to your first question, what the field service engineer or technician means to our business, they are the value that our salespeople sell. I mean, it's not just some offer on paper that a salesperson goes and tries to get a PO for. It's literally the human beings that execute that offer. It's the men and women that show up at a new site every day, a different customer site every day. They walk in with a piece of our culture at Schneider, the logo on their shirt, but they're exhibiting our brand and our core values through those interactions with the customer. So, depending on how well we've supported and the culture that we've driven for our field service engineers and technicians, it's going to lead to the type of experience that they provide to the customer ultimately. That is the value right there. So they're incredibly important. And I would argue that our service front line is the most important part of our business. They are at the center of everything. So when we talk about, trying to improve customer experience, the first thing we should look at is improving our employees' experience. I'm a huge proponent of the saying, happy people make happy customers. So focus internally first.
For a long time, I've believed, and you and I've had conversations around this, of how those field technicians become ambassadors of the brand. And corporate marketing can do a lot to build, and they've done a phenomenal job in building, the Schneider green, right? And, by the same token, as you mentioned, when that field technician shows up and they're courteous and they're helpful and they go above and beyond the call of duty to take care of that customer and solve their problem, it reinforces that brand and that Schneider green, and that we're here to ensure the brand promise you bought early in our relationship is actually delivered in your respective buildings. So talk about, what do you do as an organization to remove friction, or to really enable their success, or to make sure Service Council does the field of the voice of the field technician. Their number one complaint is all the administrative, or all the things that bog them down. So what are you guys doing to combat some of that, to really enable their success?
Yeah. I go back to some of the talking points on digital. So what sorts of tools can we arm and enable them with to help them do their job better, make their life easier, help them be the hero to the customer, because they have this cool trick of, it's not just your wrench and pliers anymore. It's all these digital tools that you might not see, but they facilitate the execution of the work. The other thing is, this group of frontliners is traditionally one of the hardest ones to communicate to. We talk about the corporate speak and the marketing pitch and everything, but trickling down to the front line, again, they're out on site, different site every day. They're not necessarily drinking the Kool-Aid, sitting behind a corporate computer, receiving all of our messages. So how can our message and our vision and our ambitions reach the front line? And connecting those dots, actually, you and I had a really great collaboration with some strategy visualization on our HERO program. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, would love that. And what I appreciated about through that journey was, I think, and I'll welcome your comments on this. Karin, do you believe your background, because you came to field service from marketing, do you believe your background in marketing helps you with exactly that challenge of how do we package, how do we communicate the right message at the right time in the right amount and the right frequency with those field technicians who are busy? And as you said, they're just enthralled in doing their jobs. They're not sitting and waiting for email.
Right. Absolutely. I think my background in marketing is invaluable because at the end of the day, we're all just people trying to communicate with each other. And you really need to know your audience if you expect them to listen to for the message to be received, right? For it to even trickle down to them and for it to mean something. If you want the change to be adopted, you've got to tailor your message. One size does not fit all. And so I learned that lesson in some roles in internal communication and internal marketing. And I used that skill set every day.
It's a critical point, and it goes to your willingness and I think your ability to really empathize and really understand, not just from a corporate standpoint as the producer of that information, but really the field technicians as the consumer of that information, how to best connect the dots, how to best really help them understand not just what's happening, but why. So you brought up the HERO engagement, and not only you and your team were great fun to work with, and I really appreciate James Milet's leadership and support of that effort as well as yours. Talk about the HERO program. Kind of give our audience a glimpse of where did it come from, and we can talk about what we did and how we did it, but talk a little about that experience.
Well, it was almost 2 years ago this month that I accepted this position leading services for digital buildings. And up until that point, there had never been a fully dedicated leader in the services part. So we were actually in digital buildings, historically a construction organization. And people get pretty excited about these huge new, skyscraper buildings that we build. My goal was to come in and convince everybody, yeah, that's cool. But you know what's even cooler is day two services. After the building is built, we get to have customers for life. And we get to work with them and provide a value for the long haul. And that's where it's at. So I come in with this challenge to carve out services. And I was, assessing current state, understanding status quo, and also matching that up with where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years? How do we get from point A to point B? And started listing out all the strategic initiatives that we had, all the long-term ambitions, and thinking, okay, how are we going to get there now? And knowing that technician, going back to them, they're at the center of all of this transformation. I needed a little bit of a roadmap, targeted messaging, something. And you're great, Nour, about telling me and checking people on the MBA talk and corporate talk. And how do I tailor my message and make sure it reaches the front line? So that was the impetus of the HERO program.
And then with your permission, I'd like to share with the audience, kind of give them because the common thread is Lynn Wilson, our creative director, who also did a lot of the visualization work, also created this. So you want to talk a little about what we're looking at?
Sure. So not only did I have a massive service transformation to see forth, I also had a peer on our construction side or our systems side who had the same sort of journey and transformation to arrive at, aggregating all sorts of ways of working and processes and inefficiencies and having this one way of working, and bringing our teams along with us and helping our teams identify where they fit in the big picture. So yes, on the day-to-day, we might be asking you to change a tool or change a step in a process or do something different, in your travels on the way. But what's the point? And so to have a big picture type view that you could pan out and identify, like, that's why they're asking me to do this differently. And I see, like, I'm contributing to the huge big picture for the long term. That's what this visual boils it down to.
And for our audience, we also use the backside of this to really create, and to Karin's, kudos to you and your team with the Building Hero Award program. Now there's, back of this really highlighted how to put those field technicians at the center of all that you do and really recognize them for going above and beyond. It's been a few months since we rolled this out. Can you talk a little about the outcomes and the great results from it?
Yeah, well, and it's funny because Nour, we were working not only with myself, but with my peer, as I mentioned. And I remember he came at you with a 40-page strategic PowerPoint deck. And I was a little bit fresher, so I wasn't bogging you down with tons of Word docs and PowerPoints, but I was a little scattered, and it was such a helpful process to get to that one visual. So now what do we do to animate? Fine, we have this great strategic visualization that simplifies the message. How do we give it legs? And that's how the hero recognition program came to be. So if I'm a technician and I'm aligning to our core values and I'm picking up the new trends that you're trying to me to adopt, I'm going to recognize that behavior and celebrate that and put your name in lights. And that is the hero recognition program. So when you see someone doing something great and aligning to our strategic ambitions, enter a nomination. The beautiful thing about the hero program is it's peer-to-peer. We have a slew of top-down recognition programs. We've got President's Club for our sales teams. We've got all sorts of great stuff at Schneider Electric. But we needed something to give the love back to the front line. And I think it means a lot more when the men and women that you're working side by side with every day notice it and call it out. And it starts there and gains momentum. What we did was we received hundreds of these peer-to-peer hero nominations. And every month we would select the best one. It was hard to do, actually, to find the best one. And we'd publish it. We'd put their name in lights. We'd create a plaque and mail that certificate or a plaque to the employee. And at the end of 2021, we ended up voting on the top monthly hero and gave a big spot bonus and celebrated that person. That person, actually, I should share, his name is Shannon, and he works out of one of our Texas branches. The story with him was last year during the Texas ice storms, which whoever's in Texas, I'm sure you remember it well. He spent the night at a customer site, a hospital, because he knew how important it was for that hospital remain up and running. And he wanted to make sure that during those ice storms that nothing would go wrong. And he spent, the night away from his family on a cot at a hospital and during COVID too. And it was just pretty amazing the lengths that our employees will go to on behalf of our customers. It's really great.
And think, for our audience, think of that story of a field technician spending the night in a cot in a hospital to make sure that client is taken care of, with all the challenges out there and finding great talent and developing and retaining great talent. And truly all these heroes that go unrecognized on a daily basis, and the work ethic and what they put in behind the scenes. I mean, their best days is when nothing goes wrong.
Yeah.
And to recognize them with something like this, Karin, it goes beyond a poster that says our people are our biggest asset. You guys actually are walking the talk, and you're demonstrating your commitment to that talent agenda. So again, kudos to you guys.
It became very real to me just this week. So we're continuing the hero program into 2022. And our January winner is this great guy out of Boston. His name's Renee. And he's one of those names that I've never met this man in person, but his name consistently bubbles up from customer feedback and great stories. So he was our January winner, and he published the certificate that we awarded him with on LinkedIn, talking about how much he loves Schneider Electric and how grateful he is for a supportive culture and team. And that's when it came full circle for me that I was no longer pushing this initiative and driving. It's now got the legs that I mentioned earlier. It's on its own now.
And I've always believed your next great employee is probably a friend or a colleague of some of your current employees.
Oh yeah.
And what better billboard for the culture than somebody talking about how much they love the place and how much the place means to them and how much that recognition is just the gratitude for it is you see me and you recognize the impact and the contributions that I'm making, and for that I'm grateful, right? So moving on to you've obviously read the Curvebenders book. I describe Curvebenders as these great relationships who, beyond helping us with any transactional event, they leave an indelible imprint, and they shape not just our performance, but the managers, the leaders, the human beings we become. Right. Karin, in thinking about your own growth journey, can you think of 2 or 3? You can use first names if you want, or you can just tell us who they are, but people that have shaped your trajectory?
Yes. And I have some that shaped it in a negative, or, were the negative influencers that taught me to overcome those.
Fender benders, right?
Yeah, exactly. But there are 2 leaders that come to mind that actually I think about all the time. And one is a former boss. His name is Billy Wang. And Billy was it was when I first started in like a true services function at Schneider Electric. And he showed me what it meant to be a servant leader focused on our people. So for Billy, it was all about the experience that we are creating for our employees. He made it personal. And so, I mentioned, President's Club. We've got these great trips for our top stars. Traditionally, those trips are, husband and wife. Billy was like, bring the kids too, just pile them on. And we had a meeting one time. He came out to Chicago to have a workshop with me here. He's from California. And I had a conflict one evening when we were supposed to have a work dinner. Well, my conflict was my daughter had soccer practice. So what did Billy do? He was like, I'm coming with you. Do you have an extra lawn chair? He came with me to my daughter's soccer practice. And it was the way that he invested in me personally. It was the example that he set that I bring with me as a leader through all of my encounters. So Billy Wang, look him up on LinkedIn. He's going to have a whole bunch of new hits after this session. But the second leader is my current manager, boss, mentor, friend, James Milet. And I'm sure several of our listeners already have heard of the reputation from James Milet. He's fantastic. What James brings is wisdom, and he's willing to share it in a great way. He coaches and enables me, and he has popped my Schneider bubble, if you will. Like, he thinks of the outside in. He has an extensive network. He's willing to share it. He stretches me beyond just what I'm, doing today, next week, next year. He's thinking for like the next decade. And it's very empowering to have a leader who I know believes in me and is willing to share that wisdom with me in a productive way. So I'm grateful for the time. Everything is temporary. So I'm grateful for the time that I had with Billy, and I value it. I'm grateful, and I'm maximizing the time I have with James today. And we'll see who that next great leader is.
For our audience, some of you may know I have teenagers, 20 and an 18-year-old, and we recently had a conversation around, your career trajectory. And one of the comments I made to them is that first job out of school is really important, particularly to go for, go work for a boss, go work for a manager, leader who's going to take you under his or her wings and teach you not just the business, not just a company and the ecosystem, the competitive landscape, whatever, but teach you how to be a better human being, teach you how to do the job right and do it well the first time, and demonstrate to you the attributes you want to really embrace and incorporate into your own leadership brand. And I don't know Billy, but I do know James Milet, and he's Karin and I. You and I've talked about the ridiculous knack the man has for identifying and nurturing great talent, and really identifying competent, capable, intelligent, engaging leaders like yourself, and then nurturing your success along the way. And your colleague Chris, who we worked with as well, now president of Ireland, and running that country's business. And likewise, your realm of responsibilities have grown, and you've done a lot more under James' tutelage. So they're definitively that curve bender mentality or mindset, if you will. So I think I mentioned to you one of the fascinating topics that came up as I was writing the book, because I was giving people a roadmap on how to identify, nurture relationships with, and find curve benders in their life. Was one of my curve benders said, David, this is great, but I think there's a more profound question here, which is, how do we all become curve benders in the lives of others? Mm-hmm. So that's my next question of you is, as you develop, as you nurture your team, as you think about the love, the support that Billy and maybe James have poured into you, Karin, how are you showing up as a curve bender in the lives of others? How are you ensuring that beyond the transactional, beyond the performance, you leave that long-term imprint on the managers and leaders they become?
Yeah. This one is a loaded question, and it's nothing that I take for granted, being able to be in a leadership position, to be able to influence others. James gave me some great advice, because I'm a fangirl of other leaders, one being our CEO, Annette Clayton. I look up to Annette. She's a strong female leader. I can see and recognize myself somewhere higher up. It's something I aspire to continue to climb the career lattice. And James pointed out to me, he's like, you're a huge fan of Annette's. How many layers up above you is she? She's, 2 gaps of leadership between you and Annette. Now think of someone that's 2 gaps of leadership between you and below you. You could be that. You're Annette Clayton to other people. So don't lose sight of the fact that you are an inspiration to others and to help people along the way. So first was just pointing that out to me, and for me being able to humbly acknowledge and accept that, and now take all the opportunities that I can. I'm a huge advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we have several employee resource groups at Schneider Electric that I am actively involved with, and I'm an active ally for different groups. And I take the time to meet other employees through those groups that I wouldn't normally have the chance to work with on a daily basis. I love mentoring other young emerging professionals and being able to give my fresh take on career advice, because frankly, I did mention 2 amazing men that I look up to that have been influential in my life. I haven't had a lot of women leaders. So now I could be that person for someone. So I'm not going to try to be like a man. I'm not going to try to lead like a guy. I'm going to be myself, my authentic, transparent self. And that's what I bring to the table.
That's fantastic. So talking about that growth, talking about diversity, inclusion, equity, initiatives, groups that you're passionate about, you're involved in. Talk about what's next in your personal and professional growth journey ahead. You and I've talked about, you read in the book, this idea of your journey from now to next. Mm-hmm. So Karin, vice president, doing well, realm responsibilities, great progress. The company's doing well. What's next for you? How do you learn? How do you grow? What's that journey like?
I'm lucky to work for a company that really does invest in its people. So I take advantage of a lot of our leadership learnings and curriculums. And, I block time on my calendar to be able to learn and actually leverage some of the tools that are at my disposal. And I network with people outside of my own company to try to keep a fresh perspective, keep my ear to the ground. And I do also, try to inject things like reading and listening to podcasts, industry publications, things like that. What's next for me probably is a job that doesn't exist yet. I'm not a fan of stepping into a role that's already been worn out by somebody else, or the run rate of some business that's kind of dying out. I'm interested in the future, what hasn't yet been developed, emerging trends and technology, and how can I come in and be of value and take my experience and like craft something new and leave a legacy behind for somebody else to come in and improve.
Love that. Love that. So, again, one of the key ideas that I wrote about in Curvebenders is this idea of work-life blending. You and I, we both have kids.
Yeah.
Your life, evolves around these kids. And Karin, I made a comment the other day that my kids have an amazing mom, and how she kind of, beyond her professional role, she also runs our house. And so somebody said, well, I need a Wendy. And it made me chuckle, but also realize how impactful and amazing moms are. But on top of that, working moms, because there's this inherent conflict of, I've got professional obligations, but also have personal aspirations. Mm-hmm. So how have you, as a professional working mom, how are you making that work? How are you blending those two and being okay with it?
Well, first, let me say that I can look back at the pre-pandemic, mid-pandemic, post-pandemic, and say the pandemic was the great equalizer for working moms. Working dads, there's plenty of them out there, but I don't know that they were necessarily, the women are always looked at as the caretakers and investing in the family like that. And I historically would try to hide the fact that I had children. I have 4 kids at ages 3 to 16, big span. So a busy life at home, but I always tried to hide it because I was worried that other people would write me off or think that, I've got too much going on at home. I couldn't possibly travel for work, or, nobody really knows what my personal life is like. And I don't want that to speak for me or before I walk into the room. So, do you remember that video? It was a BBC News video of a dad doing a live broadcast and the kid comes in. Well, pre-pandemic, that happened to me. And I was doing a live broadcast at work and my daughter was homesick and she came in trying to talk to me while I was doing a live broadcast. And I thought my career was over. I mean, it was, thank goodness that man had kind of broken the ice because it wasn't so bad, but it was just not really acceptable yet in professional world. But now flash forward today, bring your kids to work day is every day. Right. I mean, we are invading their space. Yeah. And so now it's like, oh, come on, sit on my lap, like join me in podcast. So it's a huge shift that happened almost overnight. And I really think it's the equalizer for working parents. And I love that. Now, the other thing that just makes me successful from a more tactical standpoint, and I've learned through the years, is have one calendar. You said work-life blending. Thank gosh you didn't say work-life balance, because I don't think there is a true balance. Blend it. One calendar, the kids' doctor's appointments, school teacher conferences. I'm working late and I'm traveling and stuff, falls into whatever time slot it can find. So one single calendar helps me effectively be a great mom and a great employee. And the other thing I can't go without saying is I do have a wonderful supportive spouse who's in an industry much like mine, actually ex-Schneider Electric employee. And we get to talk about work, and I can share all of that. And I do get to talk about these types of things at the dinner table with my husband and kids. And I don't try to compartmentalize one or the other. I think that's the key to success.
For our audience, if you've joined us late, you're listening to Karin Hamel, VP of Services for U.S. Digital Buildings in North America for Schneider Electric. And we're talking a lot about curvebenders as relevant to field service, customer service, customer experience, and really increasingly what's becoming the career lattice, where you may move diagonal or you may take on other roles and not necessarily career ladder. And we're talking about the curvebenders concepts and ideas and bringing those to life in the examples that I've observed just being around Karin. So one of the things you mentioned, and when I asked you, how do you learn, how do you grow, beyond the reading and the podcasts and those that are critical, you also mentioned your network and James Milet's network. And the network, which I thought was fascinating, above and beyond the Schneider Electric, your kind of company network, you also invest in meeting peers across other companies, even some other industries. And as we mentioned earlier, Service Council is a fantastic gathering for that, which you serve on the advisory board on. Talk a little about your Service Council experience and perhaps some of the relationships you've met at the symposium or just being around that community and what that's done for your personal and professional growth.
The best thing that's come out initially from the Service Council, especially through the pandemic, was not feeling isolated and alone in the field service industry, thinking that I'm the only one dealing with these labor challenges and COVID spreading through a branch and site closures affecting the way we work. It was so refreshing to be able to just talk openly with peers of mine in the industry or similar service functions, to be able to, work through different solutions and best practices, or say, no, I tried that. Don't go down that road. That one didn't work out so well. And just to bounce things off. So, that's been incredibly helpful and comforting in a way. Learning from these other people, that Chicago symposium, some of the keynote speakers up there, I learned so much, and it was great to actually then walk up and shake hands and meet them afterwards to ask a few deeper level questions. I think that's been the most valuable piece of this. Another little thing happened just last week, because of this network of other leaders I've been able to meet and connect with on LinkedIn. Now I'm exposed to the posts that they like and the people that they follow on LinkedIn. So I'm finding myself like reading new content and following new people there. So it's really opened up my eyes and ears.
I've been a student of this for a number of years, and I often coach executives that beyond your academic foundation, beyond your professional pedigree, your portfolio of relationships inside the organization as well as external to it become often your biggest asset, in solving challenges, in uncovering opportunities, in seeing that exact same scenario from a different lens and different perspective. And Karin, kudos to you, because it sounds like you're embracing that idea, kind of head on and fully. So congrats on that. Talk about, I'm always curious, and again, somebody else asked me this, and I think a lot about them, of Karin of 10 years ago, Karin of 20 years ago, knowing what you know now. And a friend of mine, by the way, says age is a terrible price to pay for wisdom, right? Yeah. What advice would you give that Karin? What would you talk either sense into her or tell her to do more of or less of? What piece of advice would you give that Karin of 10 or 20 years ago?
A lot of advice. First of all, though, I would not change anything. All of our experiences are building blocks that make us who we are today. So, and I've had plenty of ups and downs in my personal and professional life, and I wouldn't change it. As painful as some of those things have been to live through, I wouldn't change them because they make me who I am. But with that in mind, I'd say the first piece of advice I'd give myself is everything is temporary. Just learn from it. So, the setback that you have professionally or the challenge that you might be going through with your child at the time, you will overcome that. You will either learn to live with it or find a way around it, solve it, whatever it may be. So everything is temporary and just stick with it. And the second piece of advice I give myself is to go where I am valued. I told you I started out in the restaurant industry, and this was in the early 2000s, and we weren't quite as progressive as a nation as we are today. And I remember having a conversation with my general manager asking for, I wanted to be paid the same as a male counterpart of mine in a leadership development role. And he laughed in my face. And I have that imprinted in my brain. I told you earlier, the people that are great role models, and I have some that were not so great. And those experiences have led me to go where I'm valued. And I also remember a time early in my mid-20s, I had taken a step away from corporate America to focus on at home. My children needed some extra support. And I found myself in a kind of dead-end job and just to make ends meet. And I remember role playing with a friend around how to go from a $2 raise, like go from making $12 an hour to $14 an hour. And I didn't have the self-confidence at the time to even have that conversation with my manager. And to just know when I finally found a place, Schneider Electric, where I am valued, I recognize it, I see it, they invest in me, I'm a loyal brand ambassador now. I found a place where I'm valued and I'm staying. And if I may indulge you, I happen to have a copy.
Wow. For the audience, I did not put her up to this. This is self-induced.
And I was giving some thought to the curve benders in my life and my life experiences, knowing this conversation was coming up. And you have a wonderful quote in here. It says, "Remember, in the future, the only job security we can expect is the value we bring. And the only loyalty organizations should expect is the continuous learning and growth they create for their talent." I am a testament to that line in your book. And I feel like I found a place, Schneider Electric, which invests in me. So it's just very timely there.
Very kind of you to share that. And again, having spent time with James, who you work with, I've seen those examples of those investments in individuals and really raising the bar on what you and pushing you. And that's the other thing. I often say no growth ever comes from a place of comfort. So managers and leaders who see the best version of us and they see the ingredients and they push us beyond that comfort zone. They push us beyond that which we even perceive we're capable of, are invaluable in that growth journey. Because inevitably what happens is begrudgingly we go do it, and then we surprise ourselves of, oh my God, as you said, it wasn't that bad. I survived. Right? I'm still breathing. Nobody died on my shift. And by the way, I did okay. And for my first time, now I want to go again, and I want to do more. And those leaders and those organizations become invaluable. So I'm guessing you're not proactively taking calls from recruiters because of what you said. I'm happy and I'm valued. And the reason I bring that up is all these organizations that are afraid of losing their people maybe kind of turn that lens inward and ask, are we identifying Karins of the world? Are we recognizing her? Are we valuing them? Are we elevating their skills, their knowledge, to want to stay, not be afraid of they're going to steal somebody away?
I think, the way I look at the leadership that's inspired me and the way I hope to lead is it's just, what's the quote? Life is not about, it's about the journey, not the destination. So we all have a destination of growth we want to get to, most of us. We all have things we want to accomplish and numbers we want to hit by month end, year end. But a great leader isn't always just focused on the bottom line. They're focused about the journey to get there and the people who are going to help them on that journey, and really just looking and within and focusing on those people and their experiences. Because if you create great experiences for your people, they will pass that on to your customers. And that's what's going to give you the growth.
On that note, for our audience, if you joined us late or if you missed this session, it was a great one. Karin Hamel is Vice President of Services for Digital Buildings, Schneider Electric, a friend, colleague, client. We've done some great work together. Look forward to doing more great work together. Karin, thank you for being our guest on the Curvebenders podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
For our audience, I would encourage you to come join us at nourgroup.com/forum. Karin is a member there. We'll continue this conversation. You can also subscribe to the Curvebenders podcast on Apple or other places where you consume podcasts. We're live each Tuesday at noon Eastern. So thanks for joining us and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everybody. All the best.